My daughter-in-law told me the celebration dinner was canceled. It's postponed, Mom. You don't need to come. I believed her. But as I walked past the restaurant, I saw them, her and my son, toasting with their friends, using my credit card. In that moment, I took out my phone. I canceled the card, and I watched the smile vanish from her face in seconds. There are moments in life that break you in two, moments where the floor disappears from under your feet, and everything you thought you knew turns to ash. That October night, walking through a fancy downtown neighborhood with my grocery bag in my hand. I lived that moment. My name is Eleanor. I'm 67 years old. I have wrinkles I count as medals, and a heart I thought was unbreakable. For 42 years I was married to Albert, a good man who left me a widow 5 years ago. Since then my world shrank to 3 things: my 2-story house in the suburbs, my bougainvillea plants I care for every morning, and my son Matthew. My only son, my reason to keep going when Albert was gone. But that night, as the cold October air hit my face and the city lights flickered indifferently, I discovered that a mother's love can become her worst blindness. It all started with a phone call 3 hours earlier. I was making my famous chili, the one Matthew loved since he was a kid. When my cell phone rang, it was Valerie, my daughter-in-law. "Mom, how are you?" Her voice sounded rushed, almost irritated. "Look, I'm calling to let you know that dinner tonight is postponed. Matthew had a problem at work, so we'll just celebrate another day." I felt a pang of disappointment. We had planned this dinner for 2 weeks to celebrate Matthew's promotion at the architecture firm. I had bought the freshest ingredients. I had taken out the china we only use for special occasions. I even went to Linda's bakery for those donuts that Valerie likes. "Is Matthew okay?" I asked, worried. "Do you need anything?" No, everything's fine. It's just, work. Don't bother coming over. You should rest." And she hung up. Something in her tone bothered me. It wasn't concern I heard. It was a rush, like I was an errand she needed to get rid of quickly. I stood there looking at the steaming pot, the chili bubbling with that aroma of spice and cinnamon filling the kitchen. I felt a weight in my chest. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe I was just being a paranoid old woman, like Valerie had accidentally called me once during an argument. But I couldn't stay calm. I decided to go for a walk. I needed air, to clear this strange feeling tightening my stomach. I put on my beige sweater, the one Albert gave me, the one that smells like lavender because I keep it stored with sachets, and I left, heading toward the market. Maybe buying some flowers would cheer me up. The sunset painted the sky orange and violet. The streets were alive, street vendors. The smell of roasted corn, music pouring out of shops. I walked without a destination, just letting my feet carry me. And then I saw it. The restaurant. The Skyview Terrace. That elegant place with huge windows and warm lights. The one Matthew always said was too expensive for a casual dinner. I passed in front of it by chance, by that cruel chance that destiny sometimes hands you when you need to wake up. And there they were. Matthew, my son, sitting at a large table by the window, laughing, with a glass of red wine in his hand, making a toast. Next to him, Valerie, wearing that tight black dress I had never seen, her hair up in a sophisticated bun, looking like she was the queen of the night. But they weren't alone. There were 8 other people at that table, their friends. I recognized some. Jessica and her husband, that pretentious couple who always makes snide remarks. Richard, Matthew's friend who sells insurance. 2 girls I didn't know. With makeup like models. And everyone was laughing. Everyone was toasting. Everyone was eating from those huge plates they only serve in restaurants where one meal costs more than a week's groceries. I froze on the sidewalk. People passed by me, bumping into me accidentally. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. There were wine bottles, 3, 4. I lost count. Shrimp cocktails, cuts of steak, desserts on fire. And in the center of the table, a silver bucket with champagne. Valerie raised her glass, said something that made everyone laugh, and Matthew kissed her on the cheek. It was like someone plunged a knife into my chest and twisted it slowly. "It's postponed, Mom. You don't need to come." Valerie's words echoed in my head like a mocking joke. Nothing was postponed. They just excluded me, lied to me, pushed me aside like you push aside old furniture that no longer matches the decor. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when I remembered something that froze my blood. That morning, Valerie had asked to borrow my credit card. "Mom, I need to buy a gift for Matthew, something special for his promotion. Can I borrow your card? I'll give it back to you tomorrow. I promise." I, as always, gave it to her without hesitation. And there they were, spending my money, celebrating without me, laughing, probably at how easy it was to fool the stupid old woman who gave them everything without asking. Something inside me broke. It wasn't sadness. It was rage, a cold, silent rage that rose from the pit of my stomach until it filled me completely. I took out my cell phone with trembling hands. I opened the banking app, and there, in real time, I could see the charge they had just made. Restaurant The Skyview Terrace, $47,300, $47,300, in one night, on a lie. I didn't think twice. My fingers moved on their own. I went to the security section, and I canceled the card. Immediate cancellation, all pending transactions, blocked. I looked up at the window just in time to see the exact moment. A waiter approached the table. He said something to Valerie. She frowned. She took out her cell phone. Her face, which seconds before was glowing with happiness, transformed. First, confusion. Then, panic. Then, rage. I watched her show the screen to Matthew. I watched him pull out his phone too. I watched them both start typing frantically. And then, as if she could feel my gaze, Valerie looked up. Our eyes met through the glass. She saw me standing on the sidewalk with my old sweater and my grocery bag, staring at her. And on her face, I saw something I will never forget. It wasn't shame. It was contempt. She looked at me like you look at an annoying insect that ruined the party. Matthew saw me too. He turned pale. He said something. Valerie stopped him. She put her hand on his. Shook her head. I didn't move. I didn't go in. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I just watched them. I watched them until Valerie looked away, uncomfortable, until Matthew bowed his head. Then, with the dignity I had left, I turned around and walked back home. My legs were shaking. The city lights blurred through the tears I refused to let fall. The noise of the street became a distant hum. When I got to my house, I locked the door, turned off the lights, and sat on the living room sofa. That sofa where Albert and I watched Matthew grow up, where we celebrated his first steps, his birthdays, his achievements, and for the first time in 5 years, since Albert died, I felt completely alone. But in the midst of that loneliness, in the midst of that pain crushing my chest, something began to wake up. A question, a terrible doubt I hadn't dared to ask before. How many times had this happened? How many more lies had I swallowed without realizing it? I didn't sleep that night. And when the sun rose the next day, I was no longer the same woman. Because there are deceptions that hurt, and there are deceptions that transform you. And if you want to know how far my own family's betrayal went, and how a stupid old woman taught them a lesson they will never forget, subscribe to Elderly Stories, because this story is just beginning. And what I discovered next was much worse than I imagined. That dawn, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of coffee that had already gone cold, I started to remember, and every memory was like opening an old wound that had never healed properly. I met Valerie 4 years ago. Matthew came home one Sunday with her on his arm, smiling in a way I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. "Mom, This is Valerie. She's special. I wanted to believe him. I wanted my son to be happy after being alone for so long. Valerie was pretty. I won't deny it. Tall, thin, with that kind of confidence that demands attention. She came from Chicago, worked in marketing. She spoke with sophisticated words that I sometimes didn't understand. From the beginning, there were signs, small ones, so subtle that I ignored them, thinking it was my imagination. The first time I cooked for her, I made my Texas-style chili, the one everyone in the family loves. She barely tasted it. "Oh, I don't eat many carbs, Mom, but it looks interesting." She said it with a little smile that didn't reach her eyes. Matthew laughed nervously and changed the subject. When I showed her photos of Matthew as a child, she yawned. "Oh, Mom. All babies look the same, don't they?" When I told her about Albert, about how we met at a state fair more than 40 years ago, she checked her cell phone while I was talking. "How nice, Mom. How romantic." Without looking up from the screen. But I kept quiet. Because Matthew looked at her like she was the sun, and I didn't want to be the bitter mother-in-law who ruins her son's happiness. Then came the wedding. Valerie wanted a wedding like the ones in magazines, a huge garden, an imported dress, a banquet for 200 people. "It's my day, Mom. A woman only gets married once." She looked at me with those eyes I was starting to recognize, the ones that said, "You have the money, I have the youth. Do your part." Matthew worked as a junior architect. He earned decent money, but not that much. Valerie had just quit her job because of stress, so they turned to me. "Mom, I know it's a lot to ask." Matthew had that little boy face that always melted me. "But Dad always said that when I got married, he would pay for my wedding. I know he's not here anymore, but—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I spent $180,000 on that wedding. The savings that Albert and I had put together from selling the hardware store, money I was saving for emergencies, for my old age, so I wouldn't be a burden to anyone. Valerie chose everything. I just signed the checks. On the wedding day, she didn't even thank me. She just said, "Oh, Mom, it's great you could help us. Matthew deserved nothing less." Then came the wedding gift. They were renting a small apartment. Valerie complained constantly. "We can't live like this, Matthew. I come from a good family. I'm used to other things." One day they came to my house, Valerie with a serious face, Matthew nervous. "Mom, we found a perfect condo in the West Loop. 3 bedrooms, balcony, parking. But we need the down payment." Matthew wouldn't look me in the eye. "It's an investment. Someday it will be for our children, for your grandchild, Mom." $850,000. Almost the entire inheritance Albert left me. I did it. Of course I did. Because that's what mothers do. Right sacrifice. Give everything, even if it hurts. Valerie hugged me that day, the only hug she gave me in 4 years. "Thank you, Mom. You don't know what this means to us." But things didn't get better. They got worse. Matthew started visiting me less. He used to come every Sunday for lunch, then every 2 weeks, then once a month, always with excuses. "It's just, Valerie has yoga, Mom. It's just, we have plans with her friends. It's just, you know how traffic is." The calls changed too. We used to talk about everything. Now the conversations lasted 3 minutes. "How are you, Mom?" "Fine, son." "That's good. I'll call you later. I'm in a hurry." And then the emergencies started. "Mom, the washing machine broke. Can you lend us money to repair it? $15,000. Mom, Valerie needs urgent dental treatment. $20,000. Mom, the car needs new tires and we're short. $12,000. It always ended up on my credit card. The one I lent them for emergencies, and that they never returned. 6 months ago, Valerie used my card to buy clothes. I saw her tagging herself on Instagram with bags from Nordstrom and Saks. When I asked her about it, she laughed. "Oh, Mom, it was a sale. Don't tell me you're going to get mad over a few rags." $15,000 on clothes she called a few rags. I kept quiet. I always kept quiet. Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I complained, Matthew would pull away even more. Afraid of being left completely alone. Afraid of being the bitter old woman nobody wants around. Albert always told me, "Eleanor, you're too good. People take advantage of that." I would answer him, "It's our son Albert. A son never betrays you." But Albert was gone, and I was starting to understand that I had been wrong. That dawn, as the cold coffee turned bitter in my mouth, I realized something terrible. I hadn't been generous. I had been a coward. I gave them money because it was easier than demanding respect. I accepted crumbs of attention because I was terrified of having nothing. And Valerie knew it from the beginning. She smelled my weakness like a shark smells blood. The sun was starting to rise when I made a decision. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to beg for affection. I was going to find out the truth. The whole truth. Because if they had lied to me about a dinner, what else had they lied about? I went to my room, took out the folder from my nightstand where I kept the bank statements, the ones I never checked. Because I trusted my son, I spread them out on the kitchen table, and I started to read. What I found took my breath away. But that is something that still hurts to tell. And when you find out, you'll understand why what I did next wasn't revenge. It was survival. I couldn't stay home, not after seeing them through that window, celebrating with my money. While I was the burden they had to hide, I put on my gray coat, the one I wear to church, tied my hair in a low ponytail, and went back out into the street. It was almost 9 at night. The streets were still full of life, but I walked like a zombie, with only one destination in mind: the Skyview Terrace. Every step I took toward it was a battle between my dignity and my pain. A part of me screamed, "Go home, Eleanor. Don't humiliate yourself anymore." But another part, the one that had awakened when I canceled the card, pushed me forward. "Go. Look them in the face. Let them know you're not the fool who stays quiet anymore." When I arrived, I stood in front of the entrance. The doorman looked at me strangely. I didn't fit in there, with my simple clothes, my old grocery bag, my comfortable old lady shoes. But I went in anyway. The place smelled like money, scented candles, fresh flowers. That expensive perfume restaurants use to make people feel they're somewhere special. The tables were full of elegant people, quiet conversations, clinking glasses. And in the back, by that huge window overlooking the illuminated city, was Matthew and Valerie's table. I walked toward them. My legs were shaking, but I didn't stop. Valerie saw me first. Her queen of the party face froze. She touched Matthew's arm urgently. He turned, and when he saw me walking toward them, he turned white as a sheet. The friends at the table stopped laughing. Everyone looked at me, an old woman interrupting their perfect celebration. "Good evening," I said when I reached the table. My voice came out firmer than I expected. "Sorry to interrupt." Matthew stood up awkwardly. "Mom, you didn't need to come," they told me. I looked him straight in the eye. "The dinner was postponed," they told me. Valerie let out a nervous laugh. "Oh, Mom, what a surprise to see you here." She fixed her hair, regaining that mask of superiority. "It's just, plans changed, and we thought it would be better not to bother you. You know, at your age, it's tiring to go out at night." "At my age," I repeated slowly. "Of course." I looked at the table, the empty wine bottles, the half-eaten plates, the champagne bucket, the lobster, the expensive desserts. I counted quickly, 10 people in total. Some had already left. "And this is part of not bothering me?" I asked. "Spending my money on a party I'm not invited to." One of the friends, Richard, coughed uncomfortably. The 2 girls I didn't know looked down. Jessica, the pretentious one, exchanged glances with her husband. Matthew tried to take my arm. "Mom, it's not what you think. Let me explain outside." I pulled away from his grip. "No, explain it to me here. in front of all your friends who are toasting with the money you borrowed from me for a special gift." Valerie stood up. Her face was no longer friendly. "Mom, you are making unnecessary drama. Why don't you just go home and we'll talk calmly tomorrow?" Drama. The word burned me. I'm making drama. Tell me, Valerie, how much did this dinner cost? She clenched her jaw. That's none of your business. Yes, it is, because you paid for it with my credit card. I took out my phone. I looked up the statement. $47,300 in one night. The silence at the table was absolute. Even the conversations at nearby tables stopped. "Mom, please," Matthew whispered. "You're embarrassing us." That phrase, that damned phrase, was like a slap in the face. "I'm embarrassing you." My voice broke. Me, the one who paid for your wedding, the one who bought your condo, the one who, every time you have an emergency, pulls out her card without asking. Valerie crossed her arms. "Nobody forced you to do any of that. You offered." "You always offer everything because you need to be needed." I felt like I'd been stabbed, but she wasn't finished. "The truth is, Mom, it's exhausting, always playing the victim, always reminding us how much you've given us. You know what? If it bothers you so much to spend on us, then don't do it." Tears started to burn my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not in front of her. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I looked at Matthew, my son, the boy I raised, the one who swore he would always take care of me. "Do you think that too?" I asked him. He didn't answer. He just stared at the floor. And right there, I had my answer. I reached into my bag, took out the credit card I had mistakenly brought with me, one that still worked. I put it on the table, next to the remains of the expensive food. "Settle the bill with this," I said. "It's the last thing you'll ever use of mine." Valerie took the card with a triumphant smile. "Whatever you say, Mom." I turned to leave, but before I left that place, I turned back one last time. "Enjoy your dinner," I said, "because it cost you much more than you can imagine." I walked out of that restaurant with my head held high, even though inside I was falling apart. In the taxi on the way home, the tears finally fell. I cried silently as the city blurred past the window, but amid those tears, something was being born, a determination, a cold rage, a certainty. If this is how they treated me when I gave them everything, then it was time to find out what happened when I gave them nothing, and what I found when I got home and checked those bank statements, believe me, was only the beginning of a nightmare I had been financing myself without knowing. I got home after midnight. I locked the door. I turned on all the lights in the living room and sat down at the dining table with a determination I had never felt before. On the table, I put my old laptop, the one Matthew had taught me to use years ago. I entered the bank's portal with trembling hands, not from fear, from rage. The screen loaded slowly. Username, password. And there it was, my bank account, the one I had shared with my son 2 years ago, when he told me it was so he could help me if I had an emergency. "So you're not alone in this, Mom. I'll take care of you." What bitter irony. I started reviewing the transactions from the last 6 months, at first, calmly, then with my heart beating faster and faster. January. Charge. Department store. $18,500. Charge. Luxury spa. $12,800. Charge. Premium wine shop. $9,300. February. Charge. Milano boutique. $24,600. Charge. Michelin star restaurant. $15,700. March. And this is where my blood ran cold. Charge. Sunset Tours, travel agency, $87, $400, $87,000. I opened the details. All-inclusive package to Cancun, 5 days, 4 nights, 2 people, suite with ocean view. I got up from the chair. I paced the living room. breathed deeply. They never told me they were going on a trip. They never invited me. They didn't even notify me. I went back to the computer. I kept reviewing, like peeling an onion, knowing each layer would make me cry more. April. Charge. Cartier jewelry. $43, $200. Charge. Beauty salon. $8,900. Charge. Sports club annual membership. $31,000. May. Charge. Contemporary furniture. $52, $600. Charge. Samsung electronics. $38, $400. June. Charge. Another Michelin star restaurant. $22, $100. Charge. Barleyman tour. $11, $800. Charge. Designer store. $29, $300. My fingers trembled on the keyboard. I took out my old notebook, the one where Albert used to write down the hardware store's accounts, and I started to add. January, $58, $700. February, $63, $200. March, $104, $800. April, $98, $300. May, $103, $700. June, $81, $400. I continued with July, August, September. Every month was the same. Spending and spending, expensive things, luxuries, whims. When I finished adding, the number left me breathless. $340,000 in 6 months. My son and daughter-in-law had spent $340,000 of my money, without asking, without telling me, without a single explanation. Money I had earned working 30 years at the hardware store with Albert. Money that cost us early mornings, exhaustion, sacrifices. Money I was saving so I wouldn't be a burden to anyone in my old age. And they spent it like it was confetti. I poured myself a glass of water with shaky hands, but I wasn't finished. I remembered something. My tablet, the one I bought last year that I left charging in the living room. Matthew sometimes used it when he visited. Said his phone was running out of battery. I went to get it. I turned it on. And I found something that broke me in a way I didn't expect. The accounts were synced. His WhatsApp, his messages, everything. I didn't want to look. Part of me screamed to stop looking, that I had suffered enough. But another part, the new Eleanor, the one being born that night, knew I needed to see the bottom of the pit. I opened the chats. The first group was called The Girls. It was Valerie's group with her friends. I went in and read. Valerie. Girls, look at the necklace I bought. Cartier, obviously. The old woman won't even notice, ha ha ha. Jessica. Girl, you're my idol. I could never ask my mother-in-law for that much cash. Valerie. It's not asking. It's taking what I deserve. That old woman has money saved up and doesn't even use it. What does she want it for? Her funeral better that someone who appreciates nice things enjoys it. Carla. Ha 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 ha, no way, Val. You're evil. Valerie. Honestly, I'm sick of her, always with her martyr face, always wanting us to thank her for everything. She's a walking bank and doesn't even realize it. Every word was a stab, but I kept reading, Valerie. The good thing is Matthew is on my side now. I told him if he doesn't support me against his mom, I'm leaving. And the poor fool would do anything not to lose me. Jessica. You're a strategist, girl. Valerie. I'm not a strategist, I'm smart. And when the old woman dies, that whole house in the suburbs is going to be ours. I already talked to Matthew. It's in her name, but we're the only heirs. It's just a matter of time. I covered my mouth so I wouldn't scream. When the old woman dies, that's what they called me. The old woman. As if I didn't have a name, as if I didn't have feelings, as if I were just a burden to be tolerated as long as they could get money from me. And Matthew knew. Matthew agreed. I looked for more. I found private messages between Valerie and Matthew. Matthew, My mom asked me about the $87,000 for the trip. Valerie, and what did you tell her, Matthew? That it was a bank error, that they were going to fix it. Valerie, good. As long as she keeps believing everything, we'll keep living the good life, my love. Matthew. Sometimes I feel bad, Valerie. Oh, don't start. Do you want me to leave? Because if you prefer your mom over me, just say it now. Matthew. No. Sorry. You're right. She's old already. We have to live our lives. I closed the tablet. I got up. I walked to the bathroom and threw up. Not from physical disgust, but from the emotional disgust of realizing that my own son, the son I carried in my womb, the one I cared for when he had the measles, the one I hugged when his father died, that son saw me as a burden, as money on legs. I washed my face. I looked in the mirror, my swollen eyes, my wrinkles, my gray hair. And in that moment, I made a decision. I was not going to be the stupid old woman anymore. I was not going to continue being the walking bank. I was going to teach them a lesson they would never forget, but not with screaming, not with drama, with intelligence, with strategy. Just like Valerie said, you don't have to be good. You have to be smart. And I was about to show them that this old woman still knew how to bite. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the living room sofa, hugging the embroidered cushion my mother gave me 30 years ago, as the hours passed slowly and cruelly. At 7 a.m, the doorbell rang, insistent, aggressive. I got up, my body aching. I hadn't changed clothes. I was still wearing the same wrinkled blouse from the night before. I opened the door. Matthew was there, but he wasn't the Matthew I knew. His jaw was tight. His eyes were hard. He was wearing that expensive shirt I gave him for his birthday, his father's watch on his wrist. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, without a hello, without asking how I was. I let him in. I closed the door. I waited. He didn't sit down. He stood in the middle of the living room, looking down at me as if I were an employee who had made a mistake. "Why did you do that last night?" His voice was cold. "Why did you come to the restaurant to embarrass us in front of our friends?" I stayed quiet, processing that those were his first words. Not an apology, not an explanation, a complaint. "Are you serious, Matthew?" My voice came out calmer than I expected. "You're blaming me. Valerie is destroyed. She hasn't stopped crying all night from the humiliation." He ran his hand through his hair. "You canceled the card in the middle of dinner. Do you have any idea how bad you made us look?" "How bad I made you look," I repeated slowly. "Matthew, you lied to me. You told me the dinner was canceled so I wouldn't go. It was a surprise. We were going to ask you to come at the end for dessert." He looked at me like I was stupid. "But you showed up early and ruined everything." The lie was so blatant, it hurt. Uh-huh. And I suppose spending $47,000 was also part of the surprise. Matthew huffed, annoyed. "Mom, you're exaggerating. It was a celebration. My promotion was important. And we wanted to celebrate it right. With my money. Because you gave us the card." He raised his voice. "You always give it to us. You always say yes. And now, suddenly, you get angry and make us look bad." I went to the kitchen. I grabbed the bank statements I had printed that morning. I came back and put them in front of him. $340,000, Matthew. That's what you've spent in 6 months. Without asking. Without telling me. He didn't even look at the papers. "Those are normal expenses, Mom. Clothes, food, going out. Things we need. $87,000 on a trip to Cancun you never told me about. We don't have to tell you everything we do." His tone became defensive. "We're adults." $43,000 at a jewelry store. I pointed at the statement. $52,000 on furniture, $31,000 for a gym. Valerie deserves to have nice things. He exploded. "Do you know how hard we work? She gave up her career to support me. It's the least I can do for her." Something broke inside me. "Matthew, she doesn't work. She quit a year ago." Because she needs to focus on herself, on her emotional well-being. And who pays for all that while she focuses on herself? My voice broke. Who pays her rent? Who pays for her whims? Who pays for everything? Matthew. You have the money, Mom, he yelled. Dad left you the hardware store. You have this huge house all to yourself. Why are you so selfish? Not wanting to share with your own family? Selfish. He called me selfish. I sat on the sofa because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. I'm the selfish one, I whispered. Matthew, I paid for your wedding. I bought your condo. I've given you everything you've asked for and more. Is that being selfish? No. He crossed his arms. But now that I'm asking you nicely, you shut down and get like this. Dad wouldn't have done this. There it was. The card I knew he was going to play. Don't bring your father into this. It's true. He was always generous. He always supported us. Unconditionally. He looked at me with something that looked like contempt. You, on the other hand, you give with one hand and take back with the other. The tears started to fall. I couldn't stop them anymore. Your father also would have wanted me to be respected, I said through sobs, to be valued, to not be lied to. Matthew sighed, as if I were a heavy burden he had to carry. Look, Mom, Valerie is my wife. She's my priority. If I have to choose between making you happy or making her happy, I'm going to choose her, always. Every word was like a nail in my heart. And what am I to you? I asked with a broken voice. You're my mom, and I love you, but you're old, Mom. He said it with horrifying naturalness. You've already lived your life. Now let me live mine. Stop trying to control everything with your money. I just stared at him. This 32-year-old man who was once my baby, who clung to me when he had nightmares, who told me, I love you, Mommy, every night before bed. Now he looked at me like I was an obstacle. Matthew, I just want you to respect me, and I just want you to understand that you are not the center of my world anymore. He walked to the door. Fix the card, or Valerie and I are going to have to make difficult decisions about our relationship with you. He left. He closed the door without saying goodbye. I was left alone in that living room where I watched him grow up, surrounded by photos of happy moments that now seemed like lies. I hugged my mom's cushion and cried, like I hadn't cried since I buried Albert. I cried for the son I had lost, because the Matthew who had just left was not my son. He was a stranger who looked like him. I cried for all the years I gave love without measure, for all the times I stayed quiet, for having become someone so disposable. But among those tears, something changed. The pain turned into clarity. If I was just money to Matthew, then it was time to close the bank. And if Valerie thought I was a stupid old woman who was going to keep funding her luxuries while they planned to take my house when I died, she was very mistaken, because this old woman had just woken up, and what came next was going to surprise them in ways their manipulative minds never imagined. I spent 3 days locked in my house, not answering calls, not opening the door, barely eating, crying when my body needed to, and then drying the tears with anger. On the 4th day, someone knocked on the door insistently. Eleanor, Eleanor, I know you're in there. Open up or I'll break down the door. I recognized the voice. Rosemary, my lifelong neighbor. 72 years of pure energy and character. I opened it. She came in like a whirlwind, with a steaming pot in her hands. Child, you look terrible. She left the pot in the kitchen. When was the last time you ate something decent? Rosemary, I don't feel like... I don't care. She gently pushed me toward the table. Sit down. I made you chicken soup, and you're going to tell me what the hell is going on, because you haven't come out for days. And I saw Matthew leaving here the other day in a rage. Something in her tone, firm but loving, broke me, and I told her everything, every detail. The restaurant, the messages, the expenses, Matthew's words. Rosemary listened in silence, serving the soup, passing me napkins when the tears wouldn't let me speak. When I finished, she sighed deeply. "Eleanor, I'm going to tell you something I never tell anyone." She took off her glasses, cleaned them on her apron, put them back on. 12 years ago, I had a house, a beautiful house in Coyoacan that my husband and I bought when we got married. 3 bedrooms, a yard with trees, the kitchen I always dreamed of. And she paused. When my Ernesto died, my oldest son, Javier, came to live with me. He brought his wife. They told me it was temporary, while they saved for their own house. She took a sip of water. 2 years passed. They were still there. They didn't pay rent, didn't pay utilities. I paid for everything. One day, I found hidden documents. Javier had forged my signature. He had put the house up as collateral for a loan he never told me about. When he couldn't pay, we lost everything. Her voice broke. I was left with no house, no savings, nothing. I had to come rent this tiny apartment where I live now. I stared at her, wide-eyed. "Rosemary, you never told me?" "Because I was ashamed." She wiped away a tear. Ashamed of being so stupid, of trusting so blindly. My own son stole my house, Eleanor, and when I confronted him, he told me the same thing Matthew told you, that I was old, that I had lived my life, that he needed the money more than I did. She stood up, walked over to me, took my hands. "Don't be like me. Don't let them take everything from you, because when you lose it, you don't just lose things, you lose your dignity, and that's not easy to get back." Her words hit me hard. "But I don't know what to do, Rosemary. I don't know how to defend myself." "I do." She took out her phone. "My niece, Grace, is a lawyer specializing in family law. She's seen cases like yours hundreds of times. Let me call her." I didn't think twice. Call her. The next day, Grace arrived at my house. She was about 40, business suit, intelligent eyes. She carried a briefcase full of documents and a small recorder. "Mrs. Eleanor, nice to meet you." She shook my hand firmly. "My aunt told me about your situation, and I want you to know something. You are not alone, and what they are doing to you has a legal solution." She sat down, took out a notebook. "First things first, what is in your name, this house?" "It's completely paid off. The deed is in my name." "Perfect. And the apartment you gave your son, it's also in my name. They just live there." Grace looked up, surprised. "You gave them an apartment but never transferred the deed?" "No. Matthew told me it was better to leave it like that, for tax reasons, that we would fix it later." Grace smiled, a small but significant smile. "Mrs. Eleanor, that apartment is legally yours. They have no rights to it." I felt a tingling in my chest, as if something dormant was waking up. "And the money they spent." Grace reviewed the bank statements I showed her. She turned the pages slowly, taking notes. "This is improper use of a credit card. Technically, if they didn't have your explicit authorization for each expense, it's a crime. We can file a civil suit to recover the money." "Really?" My voice trembled with hope. "Really? And we have something in our favor." She pointed to my tablet. "Those conversations, where they admit to using your money without your knowledge, where they call you a walking bank, where they plan to inherit your house, all of that is evidence." Rosemary clapped. "That's it, niece." Grace leaned back in her chair. She looked at me seriously. "Mrs. Eleanor, I have to ask you something important. What do you want to achieve with this? Do you want to punish them? Do you want your money back? Do you want them to learn a lesson?" I thought about it. What did I want? I didn't want to destroy Matthew. He was still my son, despite everything. But I couldn't keep being his victim either. "I want my dignity back," I said finally. "I want them to understand that I am not a resource they can exploit. I want Matthew to open his eyes and see what Valerie really is." Grace nodded. "Then, we are going to design a strategy, not to destroy them, but to wake them up. For the next 2 hours, the 3 women sitting in my dining room laid out a plan. A plan that would start with a trap, a test, to see how far they were willing to go. Grace explained every step. Rosemary offered ideas. I took notes with hands that no longer trembled. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like control. "One more thing," Grace said before leaving. "Do you have a will?" "Yes, everything goes to Matthew." "We are changing that today, because if anything happens to you, I need your wishes to be legally protected." That afternoon, we drafted a new will, one that specified exactly what would happen to my assets, one that Matthew and Valerie were not expecting. When Grace and Rosemary left, I was alone in my house, but I didn't feel alone anymore. I had allies. I had a plan. I had power. Valerie had said you don't have to be good. You have to be smart. Well then, this old woman was about to show them just how smart she could be. And the trap I set for them was so perfect that they walked right into it themselves. Like mice smelling cheese without seeing the cage, Grace had told me something before she left. "Mrs. Eleanor, the best revenge isn't the one you execute immediately. It's the one you prepare patiently and let them sink themselves." She was right. 5 days passed after our meeting, 5 days in which I didn't contact Matthew. I didn't call. I didn't write. I let the silence do its work. He was the one who called first. "Mom, are you okay? You haven't answered my messages." His voice sounded normal, as if he hadn't told me I was old, as if he hadn't chosen me last. "I'm fine, son." I kept my tone calm. "I've just been thinking. Thinking about what? That you're right. I've already lived my life. It's time for you to live yours, without me being a burden." Silence on the other end. "Mom, I didn't mean... No, it's okay, really." I took a deep breath, playing my part perfectly. "In fact, I want to make up for the restaurant. I was too dramatic." "Really?" His voice changed, became more animated. "Yes, come over tomorrow. Bring Valerie. I want to talk to both of you." I hung up before he could answer. The next day, they arrived on time. Valerie wore a pale pink dress, hair down, perfect makeup. Matthew came with that relieved smile of someone who thinks they've won the battle. I sat them in the living room. I served them coffee, homemade cookies. "Forgive me for the scene at the restaurant," I began. "Rosemary told me I'm going through a bad emotional time. You know, age-related things." Valerie exchanged a look with Matthew, a look of triumph. "Don't worry, Mom. We understand." Her voice was sweet and fake. Late-onset menopause can cause those outbursts. I gritted my teeth, but smiled. "Thank you for understanding. That's why I made a decision." I took a new credit card out of my purse. Gold, shining. "This is a new card, with no credit limit." It was a lie. It had a $5,000 limit. But they didn't know that. Valerie's eyes glittered like a cat seeing a mouse. "Mom, you didn't have to." Matthew tried to sound humble, but greed was dancing in his eyes. "Yes, I did. I want you to know that I trust you." I handed the card directly to Valerie. "Use it when you need it. It's my way of apologizing." Valerie took the card with those long, red-painted nails. "Oh, Mom, you're so sweet. Right, honey?" Matthew nodded. "Thanks, Mom. This means a lot." I walked them to the door. I watched them drive away, and as soon as they disappeared from view, I took out my cell phone. Grace had installed a special app on my phone, one that notified me every time they used the card, with amounts, places, times. "Now we just wait," she had said. "If they've really changed, they'll use the card moderately. If not, they'll hang themselves." I didn't have to wait long. 2 hours later, notification, charge declined. Versace Boutique, $32, $700. Insufficient funds. I smiled. Valerie had tried to buy a $32,000 handbag. My phone rang. It was her. Mom, there's a problem with the card. It says it has no funds. Really, how strange. Let me check on it and I'll call you back. I hung up. I did not call her back. Over the next 3 days, I received 7 more notifications, all declined charges, spas, restaurants, clothing stores. Valerie was desperate to spend. Then, it was time for the next step of the plan. I invited them home again, this time with a different excuse. Kids, I need you to help me sign some papers. I put a thick folder on the table. These are inheritance documents. I want to leave everything to you while I'm alive, to avoid problems when I'm gone. Valerie sat up straight in her chair, like a dog smelling meat. Inheritance? She asked, feigning surprise. Yes, this house, my savings, everything. I want it to be yours starting now. It was a lie. They were fake documents Grace had prepared. The real ones were at my lawyer's office. Mom, you don't have to do that. Matthew tried to sound modest. Yes, I do. You are my only family. Valerie was already reading the papers, her eyes scanning every line greedily. She was looking for the amounts, the values, her prize. The house is valued at $200,000, I said casually, plus the remaining savings, plus the apartment where you live. The apartment too. Valerie looked up. Too. Everything. But I need to ask you for a favor in return. Matthew tensed. What favor? I want you to let me live here until I die. I don't want you to put me in a nursing home. This is my house. Valerie let out a little laugh. Oh, Mom. Obviously. Why would we ever do that? Because in those messages I read, you told your friends that as soon as I signed, you were going to convince me to sell the house and move me to a home to keep the money, I thought. But I didn't say it. So, do we sign? Valerie already had the pen in her hand. Not today. First, I want to organize a family dinner so we can sign it all together, with witnesses, as it should be done. The disappointment on Valerie's face was delicious. Witnesses? She asked in a tight voice. Yes, Rosemary, her niece who's a lawyer, some neighbors. I want it to be official and nice. How about Saturday? Matthew looked at Valerie. She nodded, forcing a smile. Perfect. Grace. Perfect. Now comes the good part. Do you have the evidence ready? All of it. Bank statements, screenshots of messages, recordings of the conversations where they admit they're just waiting for me to die. Excellent. On Saturday, we're going to give them the surprise of their lives. I hung up. I poured myself a chamomile tea. I sat in my favorite armchair. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. No nightmares, no tears, because I knew that on Saturday the tables would turn. And those who thought they had me eating out of their hand were about to find out that this old woman still had claws. Saturday arrived with a clear sky. I prepared the house as if it were a celebration. Clean tablecloths, fresh flowers on the table, the smell of the chili Matthew loved so much filling every corner. But it wasn't a celebration. It was a trial. They arrived early. Valerie wore a tight white dress, as if she were the bride at her own wedding. Matthew was nervous, adjusting his tie every 2 seconds. Mom, it smells delicious, he said, kissing my cheek. Thank you, son. Sit down. The others will be here in a moment. Valerie scanned the living room, already measuring spaces, imagining how she would decorate when it was hers. The doorbell rang. Rosemary entered with a lemon meringue pie. Behind her, Grace, with her work briefcase. Then, Mr. Stephen and his wife Rose, lifelong neighbors who had known Matthew since he was a child. So many people, Valerie whispered to Matthew. They're the witnesses, honey. It's normal, he replied. What they didn't know is that they were also the audience. Everyone sat around the large dining room table, 8 people in total, I sat at the head, as the hostess. Valerie and Matthew sat across from me, like defendants, though they didn't know it yet. "Thank you for coming," I began. My voice was firm. "I've gathered you because I need to discuss something important with my son and daughter-in-law, and I want you to be witnesses." Grace took out her recorder. She placed it in the center of the table. "Is that necessary?" Valerie asked, uncomfortable. "It's legal protocol," Grace replied in a professional voice. "All inheritance proceedings must be documented." Valerie relaxed. Matthew nodded. I placed the stack of bank statements on the table, the folder with the screenshots, the bank documents, all neatly organized in clear folders. "Before we sign anything, I want us to look at these papers together." Matthew frowned. "What are they?" "They are my credit card statements from the last 6 months." The color drained from his face. I opened the first folder. I took out the summary. $340,000. That's what you have spent using my card, without my express authorization. My voice didn't tremble. Trips, clothes, restaurants, jewelry, furniture, gyms. Valerie let out a nervous laugh. "Mom, what are you talking about? You gave us the card. For emergencies, not to finance a lifestyle you can't even afford yourselves." I took out the screenshots. I spread them on the table like poker cards. "This is a conversation of yours, Valerie, with your friends." I read aloud. "The old woman won't even notice. She's a walking bank. When she dies, the house will be ours." The silence was absolute. Mr. Stephen and Rose exchanged horrified glances. Rosemary pressed her lips together. Valerie turned pale. That's taken out of context." "Out of context," Grace intervened. "Mrs. Valerie, it says right here, it's just a matter of time until the old woman dies and everything is ours." "I never—" Valerie looked at Matthew for support. But I wasn't finished. I took out another set of screenshots. Conversations between Matthew and Valerie. "Matthew, did you tell Valerie that the $87,000 charge for the Cancun trip was a bank error?" My son couldn't look me in the eye. "Mom, Yes or no?" "Yes." His voice was barely a whisper. "And when I asked you why you visited me less, did you tell Valerie it was because I was an emotional burden?" Tears began to roll down his cheeks. "Mom, it wasn't literal. And when we argued 2 weeks ago, when you told me I was old and that I should let you live your life, did you mean it?" Matthew broke down. He buried his face in his hands. Valerie, on the other hand, hardened. She was done pretending. "You know what, Mom?" She stood up. "Yes, I said it, all of it, because it's the truth. You are a manipulative old woman who uses her money to control Matthew. You give and give, so he always feels guilty, so he always has to come visit you, to put up with you." Valerie shut up. Matthew tried to stop her. "No, I've had enough." She pointed her finger at me. "You want to know the truth, Matthew doesn't visit you because he doesn't want to. I don't force him. He says it himself. He's tired of your complaints, of your stories about when his dad was alive, of your house that smells like old people." Every word was a slap, but I took them standing. "Are you finished?" I asked calmly. "No. You promised us this house. You promised us the inheritance, and now you want to humiliate us in front of strangers because we took a little of your precious money." Grace cleared her throat. "Mrs. Valerie, technically, he didn't take anything from her, because everything is still hers." Valerie turned to her. "What?" Grace took some documents from her briefcase. "The apartment where you live is in Mrs. Eleanor's name. She never transferred the deed. It is legally her property." Valerie's face went from red with rage to white with panic. But Matthew said—" "Matthew had no authority to promise anything," Grace continued. "Furthermore, Mrs. Eleanor modified her will 1 week ago. You are no longer the sole heirs." Matthew looked up, his eyes swollen. "What? How dare you?" Valerie screamed. "That house is ours. We deserve it. You deserve it." Rosemary's voice cracked like a whip. For calling her the old woman, for stealing from her, for wishing her dead. Mr. Stephen shook his head. Matthew, I held you when you were a baby. I watched you grow up. I never thought you'd be capable of treating your mother like this. Matthew was sobbing uncontrollably now. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. But Valerie wasn't giving up. You know what? Keep everything. Your house, your money, your loneliness. She grabbed her purse. Let's go, Matthew. Matthew didn't move. Matthew, let's go. No. My son looked at me. I'm not going. Mom, forgive me. Valerie looked at him with contempt. Really, you're going to choose your mommy over me? I'm not choosing anyone, he answered with a trembling voice. I'm facing what I did, what I let you do to me. You're a coward. Valerie walked to the door. When you get tired of being Mommy's little boy, you know where to find me. But I'm not going to beg. And she left. The door slammed, a sound that echoed through the whole house. No one spoke for a long minute. Matthew just kept crying. I watched him from my seat. Part of me wanted to hug him. Another part was still too hurt. Son, I said finally, there's still one more thing you need to know. And what came next was the hardest decision I've ever made in my life, because it's one thing to discover betrayal. It's another to decide what to do with it. Matthew was still sitting in that chair, shattered. His shoulders trembled, the tears wouldn't stop, but I needed to finish this, for him, for me, for what was left of our relationship. Grace took more documents from her briefcase. She placed them in front of Matthew. Mr. Matthew, this is a civil lawsuit for misappropriation of funds. Your mother can legally recover the $340,000 that you and your wife spent without authorization. Matthew looked up, his eyes red and swollen. Mom, no, I don't have that money. I couldn't pay you even if I wanted to. I know. My voice came out softer than I expected. That's why we're going to reach an agreement. I took out another document, the deed to the apartment. This apartment is in my name. You have lived there for 2 years without paying rent, without paying utilities. I've covered everything. I pushed the paper toward him. You have 30 days to vacate. You're kicking us out. His voice broke. I'm not kicking you out. I'm taking back what is mine. Mr. Stephen cleared his throat. Eleanor has every right, son. That property is hers. But, Mom, where will we go? Matthew wiped his face on his sleeve. That's not my problem anymore, son. You chose Valerie. You chose to lie to me. You chose to use me. I took a deep breath. Now, you get to choose how to deal with the consequences. Grace continued. Furthermore, Mrs. Eleanor is proceeding legally for the defrauded amount, $340,000. It can be done in payments, but there must be a signed legal commitment. Matthew buried his head in his hands. I don't know what to say. You're right about everything. I don't want you to agree with me. I want you to understand what you did. Rosemary got up, went to the kitchen, and came back with a glass of water. She put it in front of Matthew with a maternal but firm gesture. Drink this, and listen carefully to what's next. I took a breath. This was the hardest part. Matthew, when your father died, you promised me you would take care of me. You said, Mom, I'm the man of the house now. You won't lack anything. His sobs intensified. I believed you. I didn't just believe you. I put my whole life in your hands. My money, my trust, my heart. My voice broke, but I continued. And you let a woman I barely knew turn you into someone I don't recognize. I know, Mom, I know, and I hate myself for it. I don't hate you, Matthew, but I also can't keep being your safety net while you drown me. Grace put 2 more papers on the table. Option 1. We proceed with the full lawsuit. Recovery of the $340,000. Immediate eviction. Possibly criminal charges for fraud. She pointed to the other paper. Option 2. You sign a payment agreement. a $50,000 initial payment, which you must get in the next 30 days, and the rest in monthly installments of $5,000 for 4 years. You vacate the apartment, and you enter mandatory therapy. Matthew raised his head. Therapy? Yes, because you need to understand how you got to this point, how you let yourself be manipulated. I looked at him intently, and I'm going to therapy too, to learn how to set boundaries, to stop being the mother who gives everything without demanding respect. Rose, who had been quiet the whole time, spoke softly. Eleanor, you are very brave. Many mothers wouldn't have the courage to do what you're doing. It's not courage, it's survival. I wiped away a tear that escaped. Because if I keep going like this, I'll end up alone, with no money and no dignity. Matthew took the paper for the agreement. He read it with trembling hands. And if I sign this, and if I accept everything, can I still be your son? The silence was heavy. You will always be my son, Matthew. That doesn't change. I paused. But our relationship has to change. You can't just come over when you need something anymore. I can't give you money every time you ask. We can't continue this sick dynamic. And Valerie, that decision is yours. But if you decide to stay with her, you'll have to live with the consequences. I will not finance her lifestyle anymore. I will not be part of that relationship. Matthew closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. When he opened them, there was something different in them, something like clarity. Mom, Valerie and I, we're not compatible anymore. I think I've known for a long time, but I didn't want to see it. He wiped his nose. She only wanted your money, and I was stupid enough to let her use me to get it. So, I'm going to sign the agreement. I'm going to get that $50,000, even if I have to sell my car. I'm going to go to therapy, and I'm going to divorce Valerie. Grace pushed the document toward him. She handed him a pen. Matthew signed. Each letter was shaky, but it was there, a real commitment. And the apartment? He asked in a small voice. I'm selling it, I said. With that money, I'm going to open a business, something of my own, a bakery with Rosemary. I don't want to live only in the past anymore. Rosemary smiled. We're going to call it Never Too Late. For the first time all night, Matthew smiled. A small, sad, but genuine smile. Dad would be proud of you, Mom. I'm the one who disappointed him. Your father loved you, and I love you too. That's why I'm doing this. I stood up, walked over to him. Because true love isn't about giving everything without limits. It's about taking care of yourself, so you can take care of others in a healthy way. He hugged me, and this time, I hugged him back. But it wasn't the hug from before. It wasn't the hug of the mother who forgives everything without consequences. It was the hug of two broken people who need to heal separately before they can be okay together. When everyone left that night, I was alone in my house, but I didn't feel empty. I felt free. Free from being the bank, free from being the martyr, free from being invisible. And as I cleared the dishes from the table and filed the signed documents, I knew something had ended, but I also knew something new was beginning. And what came next was proof that it's never too late to get your life back, never too late to be who you were always meant to be. 6 months after that dinner that changed everything, I woke up to the smell of freshly baked bread filling my house. It wasn't just my house anymore, it was also my business. Rosemary and I had converted the ground floor into a bakery, cream-colored walls, rustic wooden tables, display cases full of donuts, pastries, cheesecakes, and the carrot cake that became our biggest hit. A hand-painted sign in the entrance read, "Never Too Late, Artisanal Bakery." The investment came from the sale of the apartment. I sold it for $920,000. Part of it I used to set up the business. Another part I saved for my future, and a small portion I donated to a shelter for elderly women, victims of family abuse. Because if I learned anything from this, it's that my story wasn't unique, There were thousands of women like me, being used, being silenced, being invisible. The bakery opened its doors on a Tuesday in March. The neighbors came, acquaintances, people from the market. Mr. Stephen and Rose were our first official customers. They bought 2 pounds of butter cookies and gave us their blessing. "Eleanor, this is beautiful," Rose said with tears in her eyes. "After everything you went through, look where you are now." And she was right. After hell, I had found something like peace. But it wasn't easy to get here. Matthew kept his word. He sold his car, a Jetta he loved, and gave me the initial $50,000. He vacated the apartment in 28 days. He moved into a small studio apartment, something he could afford on his salary, and he started therapy. The first few weeks, we didn't talk much, just short texts. "Good morning, Mom. How are you?" Superficial conversations between two people who needed distance to heal. But slowly, something began to change. Matthew started going to therapy twice a week. He told me months later that his therapist helped him understand how Valerie had used emotional manipulation techniques from the beginning: emotional blackmail, isolation from his family, financial control, all disguised as love. "Mom, I thought if I made her happy, she would truly love me," he told me one afternoon while we had coffee at the bakery. "But she never loved me. She only loved what I could give her." It hurt me to see him understand that, but it also relieved me. The divorce was surprisingly fast. Valerie didn't fight. She signed the papers in exchange for keeping the apartment furniture and some savings Matthew had. She already had a new target, a businessman from Houston she had met on social media. "I wish the poor guy luck," Matthew said with a bitter smile. "He's going to need it." I didn't say anything. I didn't care about Valerie anymore. She had stopped taking up space in my head. Through the legal agreement, Matthew paid me $5,000 every month. Sometimes he would arrive with the money and a pastry he bought at another bakery. "Just so you see, I support the competition too," he'd joke. Those moments were good, not forced, not loaded with guilt. Slowly, we learned to be mother and son again, but different, healthier. He stopped asking me for money. I stopped giving it to him without him asking. He started visiting because he wanted to, not because he felt obligated. I started living my life without waiting for him as my only purpose. One Sunday, 4 months after this dinner, he invited me to lunch at his studio. It was small, modest, but clean and organized. He cooked pasta with tomato sauce, something simple, but made with effort. "Mom, I know I can't erase what I did," he said as we ate. "And I know we'll probably never be like we were before. But I want you to know, I admire you. What you did was the bravest thing I've ever seen." I got a lump in my throat. "Son, I don't need you to admire me. I just need you to respect yourself, to understand your own value, and to never let anyone turn you into something you're not." He nodded. "I'm working on that." And he was. I could see it in his eyes. He was no longer the lost, manipulated man from before. He was someone rebuilding himself. Today, as I work the register at the bakery and watch Rosemary decorate a cake, I think about everything that changed. I no longer wait by the phone, waiting for Matthew to call. I have my own rhythm, my own plans. On Tuesdays, I go to yoga class with other ladies from the neighborhood. On Thursdays, I go to the movies with Rosemary. On Sundays, if Matthew can, he comes for breakfast. If he can't, that's okay too. My house no longer smells like loneliness. It smells like cinnamon, vanilla, and fresh coffee. It rings with the laughter of customers, with the music I play on the speaker, with the conversations I have with Rosemary about new recipes. I recovered $280,000 of what I was owed. The rest, I forgave, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved to let go of that burden. The will is still modified. Matthew will inherit half of my assets when I die. The other half will go to causes supporting elderly women. He knows, and he agrees. "It's fair, Mom," he said when I told him. "I don't deserve everything, and you deserve to decide. 2 weeks ago, Grace came to visit. She bought a lemon pie for her family. Mrs. Eleanor, you have no idea how many clients have come to me telling me stories similar to yours, she said. Mothers being exploited by their own children, and when I ask them why they don't do anything, they tell me, "But he's my son, I can't." "And what do you tell them?" I asked. "I tell them your story, and I tell them, love is not submission, respect is not negotiable, and it is never, ever too late to get your dignity back." Those words stayed with me, because it's true. It's never too late. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how much you've given. It doesn't matter how much they've hurt you. You can always, always choose to stand up, choose to respect yourself, choose to live. Tonight, as I close the bakery and go up to my house to make tea, I look in the mirror. I see a 68-year-old woman, wrinkles, gray hair, tired hands. But I also see a woman who saved herself, a woman who is no longer invisible, a woman who learned that true wealth isn't in what you own, but in what you refuse to let them take from you. And I smile, because if I could do it, anyone can. It's never too late to be who you were always meant to be. A full year had passed since that night at the restaurant, 12 months that felt like a lifetime. It was October again, the month when everything fell apart and everything was reborn. I was in the bakery kitchen, kneading dough for the next day's pastries, when I heard the bell on the door. "I'll be right there," I shouted, wiping my hands on my apron. It was Matthew. But he wasn't alone. He was carrying a box wrapped in colorful paper and a bouquet of wildflowers, the simple pretty kind sold at the market. "Hi, Mom." He kissed my cheek. "I brought this for you." I opened the box. Inside was a new photo album, bound in brown leather. On the cover, engraved in gold letters, "Our Story, Chapter 2. I opened it with trembling hands. The first pages were full of old photos. Matthew as a baby, his first day of school, Albert carrying him on his shoulders, Christmases, birthdays, happy moments. Then came new pages, photos of the bakery, of Matthew and me at the grand opening, of him helping me paint the walls, of us sharing coffee in my living room, photos documenting this last year of reconstruction, and at the end, a blank page with a handwritten note. "Mom, I can't change the past, but I can honor it by learning from it. Thank you for teaching me that true love also says no, that respect is not optional, and that it's never too late to start over. I love you. Your son Matthew." Tears fell onto the page. "Do you like it?" he asked shyly. "I love it." I hugged him tight. "Thank you, son." We sat at one of the bakery tables. I served him coffee and a piece of freshly baked apple pie. "How's therapy going?" I asked. "Good, really good, actually." He took a sip of coffee. "My therapist says I am in the final phase, the acceptance and growth phase. I'm glad to hear that. And you, how are you?" He looked at me with eyes that now held more maturity. "Really? Are you happy?" I looked around. The bakery with its cozy walls, the tables where neighbors gathered every afternoon, the never too late sign glowing in the window, Rosemary in the kitchen, humming a song while decorating cupcakes. "Yes," I answered honestly. "I am happy. For the first time in a long time, I am genuinely happy." Matthew smiled. "That's all I want for you." We ate in silence for a moment, a comfortable silence, full of understanding. "Mom, there's something else I want to tell you." He put down his fork. "I met someone." My heart skipped, part protective, part curious. "Oh." "Her name is Patricia. She's an elementary school teacher. I met her in my therapy group." He blushed slightly. "She's different from Valerie, completely different. She's humble. She works hard. She has her own dreams. She doesn't ask me for anything. In fact, she insists on paying her half. Always." "And how do you feel about her?" "Peace. I feel peace, Mom, not drama. Not manipulation, just calm. I smiled. That sounds wonderful, son. I don't want you to meet her yet, he said quickly. Not until I'm sure. I don't want to repeat my mistakes. I don't want to bring someone into your life who hasn't earned that place. Those words filled me with pride. I think that's perfect. Take your time. He exhaled, relieved. The bell rang again. 3 regular customers came in, the Mendoza sisters, who came every afternoon for sweet bread. Mrs. Eleanor, we're here for our pastries, shouted the eldest cheerfully. I got up to help them. Matthew helped me serve. We worked side by side as a team, something we hadn't done in years. When the women left, Matthew stayed to help me clean up. Mom, are you ever going to forgive me completely? He asked, drying some cups. I stopped. I thought about the question. I've already forgiven you, Matthew, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means I no longer carry the weight of resentment, that I chose to let go of the pain so I could live. I looked him straight in the eye. What you did hurt me deeply, and those scars are still there, but scars aren't weakness. They're proof that I survived. He nodded, holding back tears. I'm going to spend the rest of my life showing you that I've learned. You don't have to show me anything. You just have to be a good man. Live with integrity. Treat yourself with respect. And if you have children one day, teach them that family is built on love, but also on boundaries. I will, I promise. When he left that afternoon, I stood at the door watching him walk away. He was no longer the boy who needed my constant protection. He was a man, learning to walk on his own, and I was no longer the mother defined only by him. I was Eleanor, business owner, friend, a woman, whole, by herself. That night, before sleeping, I wrote in my journal, something I had started doing in therapy. Today marks 1 year since I saved myself, 1 year of choosing me, and although the path was painful, it was worth every tear, because I learned that you can love someone without losing yourself in the process, that you can be generous without being a fool, that you can forgive without forgetting, and that it is never, ever too late to bloom. I closed the journal, I turned off the light, and I slept deeply. No nightmares, no guilt, no fear. Just the certainty that I had reclaimed the most valuable thing I had, my dignity, and that no one could ever take from me again. End. This is my story. The story of how I hit rock bottom and got back up, of how I lost my son, only to truly find him again, of how the worst moment of my life became the best new beginning. If you are going through something similar, if you feel like you are giving everything and receiving nothing, if you feel invisible in your own life, let me tell you something. You are not alone. You have value, and it is never, ever too late to start over. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Mexico, Colombia, Spain, the United States. I would love to know that these words reached you. Give this a like if you believe we all deserve respect, no matter our age. And subscribe, because here at Elderly Stories, we will keep sharing stories of courage, of rebirth, of women who refuse to be invisible. Thank you for joining me on this journey. With love, Eleanor, because it's never too late to be who you were always meant to be.